If you've been here before, you know I love Breyer Halloween. And if you watch BreyerFest 2024 from home, you might have noticed that the only holiday product discussed was the winter line. Last year, at-home viewers got to meet Spectre and were treated to a Stablemate blind bag opening. In 2021, we were introduced to the entire Halloween line on the BreyerFest live stream. If you were left craving Halloween like I was, then hang tight because I've got all of the minis we might see in this year's Halloween blind bags, plus ideas for Halloween releases that I think would be really fun. A quick interjection. I was secretly hoping that Fireheart would be our werewolf horse, since he's feral and wild, and since his release he just howled werewolf to me, but maybe another release some other day. I also had been hoping Malik would be a bats or vampire-related release, since he feels so flitty and bat-winged shaped. But I truly adore Slither, and I'm sure our upcoming bats-themed classic will be marvelous. And I put Apparition on the Standing Thoroughbred last year because I was hoping Django would be saved to become a mini for a different mold who, to me, just begs for a Dracula release. Perhaps we'll see a new mold if the 1/9 I'm thinking of ever enters the line. So, first I'll go through the Stablemate series we might see this year in the blind bags. This is sort of a follow-up to my 2023 video on the Spooky Surprise series, which goes into more of their history. I'll link to that in the notes. As usual, a disclaimer that I don't currently work for Breyer. I have no idea what they've got brewing in their cauldron for this season. So all of the following in both of my upcoming sections are guesses. So we're up to Series 6 in the blind bags now, and for this year, starting with the traditional models that we might see minified, there's Thriller, Maelstrom, Spectre, and the newest Halloween horse for 2024, Beowulf. Thriller was in 2021, and I put him on the mini Vanner because, obviously. Maelstrom from 2022 I think would look good on the mini Albarozo. Spectre for 2023 would be a good fit on Twist. And Beowulf for 2024, who I tried on the new Brio Stablemate. For Classics or 112 Freedom series, we might see Goblin, Salem, Rasputin, Tabitha, Eek, or Slither. There would also be the upcoming 112 Halloween Classic, who we haven't met quite yet, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. Back to Goblin from 2017, who I think might fit nicely on the Trotting Warmblood. For Salem from 2019, it was suggested in my 2023 video that he be put on the Little TWH, and I think that's a great idea. Rasputin from 2020 might work well on the Andalusian. And Eek for 2021, I put on Darwin, which I think is a nice fit. 2022's Tabitha might work well on the Playful Magnolia, or for a closer look-alike, I could see this design on the Little Pasofino. Slither for 2023 might be great on Darley. It's a shame to lose that mane though. And now for 2024, who I think was the tiny sneak peek Collector Club members got in their July newsletter. It's suggesting we'll see some bats, which I could see appearing on the new Arabian, just without the horn, of course. On the Standing Thoroughbred, or for an older mold, a Scamper could be a perfect canvas for a batty design. Now for models outside the typical Halloween releases that could possibly be minified, which would include web specials and special event models. 2 of these guys have already been minified for the Spooky Surprises, and 1 was minified for a special event, which leaves Frankensteed, who is absolutely marvelous and has a mini Foxtrotter mold just waiting his turn. If we look at a broader range of spooky releases, there was the Halloween Pony, who I think would be great on the Highland Pony mold. She just doesn't shout Halloween like everyone else does, and at $24.99 per blind bag, folks might not be pleased with one so small. Hard to say. I am still gonna root for Skelly to appear in the line, one of my favorite Halloween plush so far, and I think would be incredibly perfect on the Shetland. Small, yes, but super Halloween and charming enough, I think the price tag would be worth it. I really want this one to happen. Speaking of plush, Hermie would be a fun one to see enter the blind bag line, and would also be a sort of loophole for another release of a green Frankenstein's monster stablemate. He looks really good on the fjord. I'm thinking ahead for my last mini, Silver and Skullduggery. There was a mini version of Skullduggery already released in the first set of Spooky Stablemates back in 2005. But previewed during BreyerFest was this new ornament for winter 2024, and he looks an awful lot like Silver to me. I don't know how the ornament sculpting and casting works, but if there's technology that can use the same small shape without his rider, or even just shrink down the original Silver, I'm really hoping for a mini Silver stablemate as part of the 75-year anniversary Breyer will be celebrating in 2025. This would also be the mini's 20th anniversary, so a re-release as a sort of anniversary edition of the very first Halloween minis might be fun. Even if he's pushed to 2026 for a 25-year anniversary of the 1/9, and maybe with his intended coat of green, I really would love another version of Skullduggery. So those are all the minis we have left to see, not including the 2024 112 model, and perhaps excluding the plushie versions, but hopefully not. And I imagine we'll see 3 minis from this group in one form or another in blind bags this year. This next section is my own take on some Halloween releases I thought could be fun. Most of them, honestly, are ideas for customs that I hope to paint myself one day. I also have to admit I have very little experience with digital art, and I don't have a stylus or tablet or anything, so I'm clunking away on a mouse. So these mock-ups aren't quite what's in my head and do need adjusting, but they're close. Okay, this first one I've been thinking about since Breyer released the 24 Easter plush, April, in her bunny and carrot ears headband. I'm gonna start with a stuffy, and I grabbed a queenie. I'd like a bay horse though, and because of how the stuffies are put together, it'd have to be an unofficial sort of bay, I guess. Otherwise, a closer bay might look a little like this, which isn't so bad actually, but I'm gonna minus the black and start here. She'd need a new tag, so we'll X that. She needs a new blanket too, so we'll subtract the print. And actually, I'd want a purple blanket, I think, with orange trim, and maybe a black tag for Halloween, of course. I'd like some blackbirds on that blanket, and then I'm gonna stick a pumpkin hat on her head, tied with a bow, like she's dressed up for trick-or-treating. I'd call her Pumpkin. Next, I wanted to try a classic. I'd start with the cute walking draft, and then I'd turn him a creamsicle orange. I'd make him a sort of bay too, a Halloween bay where his blacks are a little bit blue, and give him some modeling. Then I'd cover him in pumpkin-shaped spots, with a couple jack-o'-lantern spots too, and call him Peppercorn. I realized this way wouldn't allow for any glow plastic, so I tried him as a pumpkin-y orange chestnut, which I think I like better. And this way he could glow. Then, and I do already have the pieces to do this next one, so I'm going to try my hardest to accomplish this custom. I want to start with a Pegasus, but we're going to ditch the feathered wings. Then I'm going to redden his eyes and nostrils a bit and paint him black. I'd give him really subtle starred apples, make him glossy, then he'd get bat wings. I wanted to call this guy Vesper, which is a Latin term for evening, and the first part of the Latin word for bat, but might have to rethink it. Apparently it also means evening prayer. On to spooky traditionals. This first one might be a bit too spooky, but I'd start with Old Timer. And actually, for this use, I would lose the hat. I'd paint him a ghostly pale gray, then I'd add a sort of opalescent hollow sheen. And on top of that, I'd add bones. And maybe his skeleton glows. I'd probably just call this guy Old Bones. For something less creepy, I'd start with an Andalusian mare. I'd lighten her dark points a bit, give her some grayish purple dun markings, and paint her a very deep bronze. I'm thinking dark like the Uffington variant, and of course she'd be sparkly. Then I'd peel off the masking to reveal her whites again, as moths and moth wings. I'd name her Lepidoptera. The wings on her sides would resemble a death's head hawk moth, and I'd put the skull shape on her withers. Initially, I tried her with black moths as her design, but that didn't leave anything glowing, and we've got so many black and white Halloween horses already. I tried her with some purple, but it wasn't quite right. I'm not sure. I want to keep noodling this concept because it's one of my favorites. Okay, I'm back to boys for a minute. I'm going to start with Cancion, and I'm going to make him a bloody bay pinto, a sparkly one. But then those markings are going to reveal some shapes, and I'd call him Van Helsing, or I'd name my custom that. I imagine if Breyer did anything similar, they might not be able to use that name. But he's got fire, and a little bottle of holy water, and some wild garlic flowers, roses, bats up here, a cross naturally, and a little coffin down here. Most of these are things he used to defeat the vampires in Bram Stoker's Dracula, where Abraham Van Helsing is referenced as having reddish hair. And if you have a Van Helsing 1 year, he's hopefully following my next idea, which would start on Vermeer. I'd get him to pale, glowy whites with a black mane and tail. Actually, his top coats would all be black. But then, with masking removed, we get a moon and some bats and a sort of skull-shaped white face. Over the blacks, I'd put rich, ruby reds as silhouettes of vampire lore, like pointed cloak collar, bats, a wolf, since Count Dracula can also shapeshift into a wolf, his castle, and of course a coffin. He'd be called the Count, but I just remembered Sesame Street, so who knows. It's based off the character in Dracula, naturally. For this next one, I'm using a mare because we need more mares. She'd be on Rhiannon, and I'd start with a gradated purple. It'd be pearlescent and pale on top that darkens to black hooves. I'd start to bring in some pale green silhouettes of leaves and blossoms with a few dark blooms that are open, then peel back masking to reveal more foliage and flowers in white so that they glow. I'd add a few strategic dark purple berries and call her Belladonna, which is after Deadly Nightshade. My last concept would be on Constantia, another mare. She'd be layered first with a pearlescent blue, then a ghostly pale gray, which would white out her eyes. There'd be some darker gray in her mane and tail, and then I'd layer gray-blue ribbons of color that look like torn clothing. They'd get darker with their layers, and in a sort of bonnet marking, sit dark on her head like a cloak. I'd call her Banshee, which is a female spirit in Irish folklore who heralds a death by screaming and wailing. And those are all my ideas for both customs I'd like to make, and ideas I hope Breyer might lean toward in future seasons. I'm really looking forward to who we'll be surprised with this year in the Halloween line. I'm curious if you've ever painted a Halloween custom of your own, or if you've considered it, and if you collect any of the Halloween releases. Do you have a favorite in these concepts? I'd love to know. Thanks so much for watching. Happy spooky season.